we'll get to that later. Former President Barack Obama is scolding liberals who don't like it when journalists ask tough questions. Watch.
We have tended at times on the progressive side to tip into kind of a scolding social etiquette police and virtue signaling. Yeah. There have been times where reporters are asking questions that don't fit the accepted narrative or are inconvenient for progressives around certain issues. And just by raising the question or pointing out facts that don't fit the neat narrative, we'll jump on them and say, why are you aiding those who are attacking us? And I do think it is important for us to not fall into that trap.
But it looks like President Biden isn't taking the advice of his former boss. Listen to what happened when the president got asked this inconvenient, in Obama's words, question.
Why did the Ukraine FBI informant file refer to you as the President Biden? Why is that term particularly applied?
Why did he ask such a dumb question?
Why do you ask such a dumb question? Richard, what kind of warning is former President Obama sending to the president and to his own party about the way that they are shutting people down if they don't like the narrative or the question that they've been asked?
Look, listen, I think this was a very good actual episode, and it was a good chance to listen to the president sort of lament on his time at the White House as well as his time post the White House. And throughout the episode, he talks about this ideal of the entire political system and how we are all engaged in this polarization where we listen to the loudest folks in the room and often forget the middle. I think in this particular clip what he's talking about, and he's right, I'm not sure this was the best answer from Joe Biden, because I think Joe Biden's answer could have been, look, my son is a private citizen. The House Oversight Committee says they have this evidence. I would urge them to, if they have it and they say they've got all these facts, to have a hearing.
We could have just said, of course I'm the big guy. Can't you tell?
Well, no, I don't think. Listen, I think there's been a lot of conjecture from this committee. This committee has spent more time, like I said in the last segment, they spent more time on television than actually in hearing rooms, actually subpoenaing people, actually asking the tough questions. So I think the president had an opportunity to call this committee out and say, listen, if you say you have this evidence, have a hearing. I'll come down there. My son will come down there. We'll testify.
Well, that's a whole other story, but we all know it's all locked up in the back drawer at the FBI. They're not touching it, so they're never going to get to that stage where they can have hearings because they can't get their hands on any of the evidence because the laptop's been sitting there for years, it's very comfortably off the, on the very back burner of the FBI.
To be fair, we've seen this movie play out before. This happened a couple years ago when there was this whole thing around Benghazi. Hillary Clinton went down there and testified for 17 hours, and nothing came of it.
Of course it didn't.
Right? There was like, all these crimes happened. She did all this stuff with Benghazi. And it was a 17-hour committee.
Where she testified. And then the truth started to come out. And
but she testified for 17 hours.
But I want to get back to the,
my point here is that they have this evidence to send out some subpoenas and have a hearing.
Let me go back around to the topic here. Jesse, it made me think of the moment this week when Karine Jean-Pierre just shut down this EWTN reporter who said, what do you say to parents who are a little bit concerned about their daughters playing sports with biological males and that they might get hurt in that situation? We know that there's a young woman who got a concussion and a neck injury playing volleyball with a biological boy. And she said, are you suggesting that trans children are dangerous? Let me answer your question. She just shut him down with a judgment on him and didn't answer his question.
Yeah, so the Democrats are just bullying reporters, and now the reporters are scared to ask questions. And if you're scared and you're working, you get hurt. That's what they say in football. When you play scared, you get injured. And that's what all these reporters are doing. They're all 30 years old. They're all looking for friends. They're all trying to build a career. And if you get ostracized by Karine Jean-Pierre, then you're going to get scared and everyone's going to look at you funny at the next briefing. 1 second, Richard. We'll get to the hearings. Right now, we're doing depositions and we're doing subpoenas. It's kind of difficult when there's a cover-up going on at the highest level. You haven't seen a subpoena? Oh, you didn't see the $6 million that they took from China that Joe lied about? Let me finish. Joe Biden and Barack Obama have to understand this. Democrats aren't fun anymore. And Obama's a guy. Guys don't get offended when we're around other guys. It's only when the girls come around. That's when we pretend that we're offended so we look sensitive. Michelle said the same thing. She's like, you know what? our daughters and their friends, they're kind of annoying. They're always trying to word check us. Like if we say Indian instead of Native American, like you can't even have these people at your company anymore. They're going to throw you a lawsuit, HR complaint, they'll Bud Light you. It's really nerve-wracking. And people are now offended on behalf of minorities. Half the time the minorities aren't even that offended. It's a liberal white woman who's offended on their behalf. Richard and I, we're respectful enough towards each other, but Richard's not offended by me. I'm not offended by Richard. I don't think Richard really wants to speech police me. He probably wants police reform. Richard probably cares about policy.
I'm glad you're speaking for me,
You
though.
can't even talk about policy with Democrats because the minute you say illegal alien instead of undocumented migrant, they just stop the conversation.
Just to be clear, you critique liberal
Admit
white
I'm
women.
right. Admit I'm right, Richard.
You critique liberal white women, but you're also speaking for me. But it's okay.
I'll speak for both of you.
So, Janine, it also shuts down the poor reporter. He never got an answer to his question. He just got shut up. Basically, he was told, shut up.
Well, first of all, I think it's rich for Barack Obama, who is the president who created this division between the press and the White House when he started trashing Fox News and conservatives during his time as president, to come out and say, they shouldn't do this. I'm happy he's come out and said it. I really am. But it makes me wonder, why is he saying it? Is this like a message to Joe, like, Joe, get off the stage, or Joe, you're being ridiculous? I don't know what his motivation is. There's a reason that he did this.
And maybe sending a message.
At some point we'll figure out what the reason is. But, getting Joe off the stage, I think, is ultimately what they all want to do. I think everyone recognizes that the Democrats are vulnerable with Joe as a candidate for president. Who knows what they're going to come up with? And you know what? You can say, yeah, subpoena them, this, that, and the other thing. They won't even answer a question. Joe is so out of control. That's a bunch of malarkey. What a dumbass question. Look at that SOB, Peter Doocy. Give me a break, man. This one's a pain in the neck. Anytime you get close to an issue that discusses or touches upon his international contacts through his son and the money that's come in, or the big guy, that's when he shuts everything down. There's no way he's going to admit or talk about any of that. And by the way, 53% of those who voted said they would have changed their vote, who voted for Biden, if they had known about the big guy. And he's just shutting it down at every turn, along with his lackey, Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI, who wouldn't let out a 1023, which is an unclassified
document by Donald Trump.
Well, you know what? He's still there. Yeah, that's right. And he's still there under Joe Biden. He works for Joe Biden, and he will not let that, and did not want to let it out until they threatened that they would hold him in contempt of court, because that 1023 has all the information they need to get to the rest of the 9 banks, and an insurance policy by the president of Burisma saying, you got $5 million from me, now you better deliver that American policy.
Greg.
Yes. Do you have a question for me, Martha? I would be interested in a question.
Well, what do you think President Obama, the former president, is getting at here? Why is he calling out his own party for basically shaming people if they're not on the same page?
This is an excellent question, because there's a subtlety to this, and then there's a real thing that he's hitting at. The subtlety is he acknowledges that they're all both on the same side, that the press and the party are on the same side, and if you just give them a little slack, it'll look better. Right. It'll just be
let them look like they're doing their job.
Yeah, let them look like they're doing their job, and blah blah blah. But then he says, we tend to, progressives at times, virtue signal, and that, it's not a lot, but you got to take it. Right? You got to admit, thank you.
It's good.
Yeah, it's good. He underestimates the problem, however, because the virtue signal and the aggression is the only weapon that the Democrats use these days if you disagree with them. You will either be a racist, a homophobe, a transphobe who wants to ban books or whatever. Maybe you're secretly a drag queen, who knows? And you're
Greg,
right.
Are you telling on yourself?
Yeah, no, I'm talking about you. And don't gay shame people here.
What?
And he should really talk to his old VP, who's basically deepened the wounds since he became elected. This is a guy that was supposed to unite the country. I would love for Joe Biden to finally say, this issue, fill in the blank, is not about race. He will never say that, either because he's incapable of completing a full sentence or he isn't allowed to say that. As he said when he was talking about the train over the Indian Ocean,
Yeah.
he said, I better not go any further. I might get in trouble.
Yeah.
He told on himself. He's not in control of his words. He's not allowed to say things. But at least Obama, I wish he would be more forceful about this, because this is a problem. He should say to his party, lighten up, guys. Come on, let's have some fun. And not everybody's a racist. That should be the T-shirt. Not everybody's a racist.
Well,
Other than
and
Tim
remember that
Scott.
David Axelrod and President Obama did not want Joe Biden to run. David Axelrod said he was like Mr. Magoo wandering around the debate stage. They did not want this. So now they're continuing on this campaign.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.